You told her she hurt you. You weren't yelling. You weren't being mean. You just said honestly that something she did made you feel bad. Maybe she ignored you for days and you said it made you feel alone. Maybe she said something cruel and you told her it stung. Maybe she broke a promise and you admitted it disappointed you. Whatever it was, you opened up. You were real with her. You showed her your pain and waited to see what she'd do with it. And that's when she said it. Those 3 words that made your stomach drop. You're too sensitive. The moment those words left her mouth, you felt something change. Not just in that conversation, but in how you saw the entire relationship. Because you'd heard it before. Many times. Every single time you tried to tell her she hurt you, every time you asked her to treat you better, every time you stood up for yourself, she said the same thing. You're too sensitive. And for the longest time, you believed her. You thought maybe she was right. Maybe you were overreacting. Maybe normal people don't get upset about these things. Maybe the problem really was you. So you tried harder. You tried to feel less, to need less, to complain less. You swallowed your hurt and told yourself to toughen up. You stopped bringing things up because you didn't want to seem dramatic. You apologized for having feelings. You made yourself smaller and quieter, hoping that would fix things. But it didn't. The hurt kept coming. She kept doing things that damaged you. The only difference was now you weren't allowed to say anything about it. Now you had to take it silently because speaking up meant being called too sensitive. And then one day something clicked. You started seeing the pattern. She didn't call you sensitive when you cried at movies. She didn't say it when you were emotional about other things in life. She only said it when you were calling her out, when you had a legitimate reason to be upset, when she'd actually done something wrong. That's when those words came out. Like clockwork, like a weapon she'd used so many times she knew exactly when to pull the trigger. And that's when you realized the truth. This wasn't about you being too sensitive. This was about her shutting you down. This was intentional. She knew exactly what she was doing. She was damaging you on purpose and then making you feel crazy for noticing. This video is about that moment of clarity, about understanding that you're too sensitive isn't just a careless comment. It's a calculated phrase designed to hurt you, control you, and make you doubt your own mind. And once you see it clearly, everything else starts making sense too. The phrase and what it really means. You're too sensitive. 3 words that sound so simple, so harmless. That's what makes them so effective. When she says this, it doesn't sound like an attack. It sounds like feedback, like she's just pointing out something about you that might need fixing. And because you care about being a good person, because you want to be reasonable and self-aware, you actually consider it. You think, maybe she's right. Maybe I am too sensitive. But here's what those words actually mean when they come from her mouth. They mean, stop holding me accountable. Stop telling me when I hurt you. Stop expecting me to care about your feelings. Stop making me uncomfortable by pointing out my bad behavior. That's the real message. It's not about your sensitivity. It's about her refusing to take responsibility for the pain she causes. When someone truly cares about you and you tell them they hurt you, they respond with concern. They ask questions. They try to understand. They apologize. They make an effort not to do it again. But when she hears you're hurt, she doesn't do any of that. She just tells you to stop feeling hurt. She makes your normal human reaction into a character flaw. She takes your pain and twists it into proof that something's wrong with you, not with what she did. And that's not accidental. That's not her being confused or misunderstanding. That's deliberate. How she uses it to control you. Once she's said, you're too sensitive enough times, she doesn't even need to say it anymore. You start doing the work for her. Before you even think about telling her something hurt you, you stop yourself. You think, is this worth bringing up? Will she just say I'm being too sensitive again? So you don't say anything. You keep it inside. You convince yourself it's not a big deal. You talk yourself out of your own feelings. And that's exactly what she wanted. She's trained you to silence yourself, to dismiss your own pain, to police your own emotions so she doesn't have to face any consequences for her actions. This is control, pure control. She doesn't have to monitor what she says or does anymore because you're doing it for her. You're managing her behavior by managing your reactions to her behavior. You're walking on eggshells, constantly checking yourself, constantly wondering if you're allowed to feel what you feel, and she gets to do whatever she wants because you're too afraid of being called sensitive to say anything about it. The power dynamic has completely flipped. She hurts you, and somehow you end up apologizing. She breaks your trust, and somehow you end up working harder to trust her. She treats you badly, and somehow you end up trying to be less bothered by bad treatment. That's not a relationship. That's a hostage situation. The setup she creates before saying it. She doesn't just randomly call you sensitive. There's always a setup, always a pattern you can trace back. Think about what happens before those words come out. You probably tried to have a calm conversation. You probably chose your words carefully, trying not to sound accusatory. You probably even started with something soft, like, hey, can we talk about something? Or, I just want to be honest with you about how I'm feeling. You did everything right. You were respectful. You were vulnerable. And then you told her the truth. You said that when she did X, it made you feel Y. That's when her face changed. That's when you saw the shift. She wasn't hearing you. She was preparing her defense. And her defense wasn't to defend her actions, it was to attack your reaction. You're too sensitive. She didn't even address what you said. She didn't acknowledge your feelings. She didn't consider your perspective. She just went straight to making you the problem. And here's what you need to understand about that moment. She knew what she was doing when she hurt you. She knew it would affect you. But admitting that would mean facing guilt. It would mean accepting that she did something wrong. And narcissistic women can't handle that feeling. It makes them feel too exposed, too vulnerable, too flawed. So instead of sitting with that discomfort, they throw it onto you. They take the shame they should feel and dump it in your lap. Why the timing matters so much. Look at when she says it. Not when you're upset about work. Not when you're sad about a friend. Not when you're stressed about family. She saves "you're too sensitive" for when you're upset with her. Specifically, when you're upset about something she did on purpose. When you catch her in a lie and confront her, that's when you hear it. When you call out her double standards, that's when it comes. When you point out she's treating you differently than she treats everyone else, boom, there it is. The timing reveals everything. If you were actually too sensitive as a general trait, she'd notice it in all areas of your life. She'd see you overreacting to small things constantly. But that's not what happens. You only hear those words when you're threatening her control, when you're about to hold her accountable, when you're close to seeing the truth about who she really is. That timing isn't coincidence, it's calculation. She's using that phrase to protect herself from consequences. And it works because, see, by the time you're done defending your right to have feelings, you've completely forgotten about the original issue. You're no longer talking about what she did. You're talking about whether you're allowed to be upset about what she did. She's shifted the entire focus from her behavior to your reaction, and she walks away clean while you walk away confused. The damage it does over time. The first time she calls you too sensitive, you might brush it off. The second time you notice, but you move on. By the 10th time, you start believing it. By the 20th time, you've completely lost touch with your own emotional reality. You don't trust yourself anymore. When something hurts, you don't think, that hurt. You think, should that hurt? You run every feeling through a test. Is this valid? Is this reasonable? Is this too much? And most of the time, you decide it's too much. You decide you're overreacting. You decide to just get over it. That's not healing. That's not growth. That's self-abandonment. You've learned to betray yourself before she even has to. You dismiss your own pain. You minimize your own experiences. You gaslight yourself so she doesn't have to. And the worst part is, you think you're being mature. You think you're working on yourself. You think you're becoming less sensitive when actually you're just becoming more damaged. You're teaching yourself that your feelings don't matter, that you can't trust your own perceptions, that speaking up about hurt only leads to more hurt. These beliefs sink deep. They affect everything: how you see yourself, how you interact with others, how you move through the world. You start apologizing for existing. You preface every request with, "I know this might sound stupid," but you say sorry before you've even done anything wrong. You shrink yourself in every conversation, every room, every relationship, because she's convinced you that the real you, the you with feelings and needs and boundaries, is too much. And if you're too much for her, maybe you're too much for everyone. That's the long-term damage. That's what happens when someone repeatedly tells you your feelings are wrong. You stop having them, or you have them in secret, in shame, alone, convinced that something's deeply wrong with you for feeling normal human emotions. The other phrases she uses that do the same thing. "You're too sensitive" is her favorite, but it's not her only weapon. She has a whole collection of phrases that serve the same purpose, all designed to make you question yourself while letting her off the hook. You might hear, "You're overreacting a lot." Same function. Tells you your response is too big, too much, not justified. Or, "I was just joking, why can't you take a joke?" This one's particularly cruel because now you're not just too sensitive, you also have no sense of humor. You're uptight. You can't have fun. She turns your legitimate hurt into a personality flaw. Then there's, "You're making a big deal out of nothing." This dismisses whatever you're upset about as not even worth discussing. It tells you that your pain is imaginary, that you're creating problems where none exist. Or, "Why do you always bring up the past?" This stops you from pointing out patterns. It makes you feel like you're the one with the problem for remembering what she did repeatedly, like you should just forget and move on, even though she hasn't changed anything. And maybe the most isolating one? Everyone else thinks you're being ridiculous. This makes you feel alone. Like, why? or the only one who sees a problem. Like maybe everyone agrees that you're too much, too sensitive, too dramatic. All these phrases have one thing in common. They shift responsibility from her actions to your reactions. They make the problem about you instead of about what she did. And they work because they tap into insecurities most people already have. Most people worry about being too much, about being a burden, about being dramatic. She knows that, and she uses it. These aren't thoughtless comments, they're tools, carefully selected tools designed to keep you off balance and keep her in control. How you know it's intentional and not accidental. You might still be wondering if maybe she really does think you're too sensitive, if maybe she's not doing this on purpose. Let me show you how you know it's intentional. Watch what happens when someone else gets upset with her, when her boss calls her out, when her friend confronts her, when her family member expresses hurt. Does she tell them they're too sensitive? Sometimes, yes. But often, watch how she adjusts. She apologizes, she explains herself, she makes an effort to smooth things over. Why? Because with them, there's something at stake. Her job, her social standing, her image, her benefits. But with you, she doesn't adjust. She doesn't try. She just blames you for being too sensitive. Why the difference? Because she's decided you're safe to treat this way. She's decided you'll stay anyway, that you'll keep trying to fix things, that you'll accept the blame and work harder. That's not accidental, that's a choice. If she can control herself with other people, she can control herself with you. She just doesn't want to. She's chosen not to because she's learned you'll tolerate it. Here's another way you know it's intentional. Watch when she says it. It's always right when you're making a valid point, right when you've caught her in something, right when she's actually wrong and she knows it. If this were really about your sensitivity, it would come up randomly, but it doesn't. It comes up strategically when her back's against the wall, when she's about to be held accountable, when the truth is about to come out. That's when those three words appear. That timing is everything. It proves she's using the phrase as a defense mechanism, not as honest feedback. The moment everything becomes clear, there's usually a specific moment when it all clicks into place, when you can't deny the pattern anymore. Maybe you're talking to a friend and you casually mention how she always calls you too sensitive, and your friend stops you. They look concerned. They say something like, "Wait, she says that to you? Every time you're upset? That's not okay, that's manipulation." And suddenly you hear it from outside your own head. You realize it's not normal. Or maybe you're lying awake one night, replaying conversations in your mind, and you notice something. Every single time she said those words, you were right. You had a legitimate reason to be upset. She'd actually done something hurtful. Your feelings were completely justified. That realization hits different because it ends accepting something painful. Someone you loved, someone you trusted, someone you gave your heart to has been deliberately messing with your head. She's been gaslighting you. On purpose, with full awareness, knowing it would hurt you, knowing it would make you doubt yourself, and doing it anyway. That truth is hard to swallow. It means the confusion you've been feeling wasn't because you're broken. It was because she was breaking you, intentionally, methodically, using your own love and trust against you. This is the turning point, the moment where you stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "What's wrong with her?" The moment where you stop trying to fix yourself and start seeing that you were never the problem. She was. The damage was always intentional. Why she does this to you. Understanding why doesn't make it hurt less, but it helps you see this was never about you. She does this because she can't handle being wrong. Narcissistic women build their entire identity on being right, being good, being the victim when convenient, being admired and special. Anything that threatens that image feels unbearable to them. So when you point out she did something hurtful, she's not hearing constructive feedback. She's not thinking about your feelings. She's feeling attacked. Her ego is under threat, and she'll do whatever it takes to make that feeling stop. The easiest way to make it stop, make it your fault. If you're too sensitive, then she didn't actually do anything wrong. The problem is your perception, not her action. She gets to maintain her self-image as a good person while you absorb all the blame. She walks away feeling fine about herself. You walk away feeling terrible about yourself. Perfect trade-off for her. She also does it because it's worked before. Maybe in past relationships, maybe with family members, maybe with friends. She's learned that calling someone too sensitive shuts them down, makes them stop complaining, makes them easier to control. So she keeps using it. Why wouldn't she? It requires zero effort, zero change, zero accountability from her, and it gets her exactly what she wants. What this means for your sense of self. If you've been hearing you're too sensitive for months or years, the damage runs deep. You've lost touch with who you are. You don't know what you're allowed to feel anymore. You don't know if your reactions are normal or excessive. You don't trust your own mind. That's not a small thing. That's fundamental. Your ability to trust yourself is one of the most important things you have. It's how you navigate the world. It's how you make decisions. It's how you protect yourself. And she's broken it on purpose. You've become someone who constantly second guesses themselves, who apologizes before speaking, who minimizes their own needs, who feels guilty for having feelings, who thinks they're a burden, who believes they're too much. None of that was true before her. You learned all of that from her. She taught you to see yourself as broken when you were actually just responding normally to her abnormal behavior. You've been trying to fix something in yourself that was never broken, while the real problem, her behavior, never got addressed. This affects everything: how you show up in friendships, how you interact at work, how you present yourself to new people. You're always holding back, always checking yourself, always afraid of being too much, and you don't even realize you're doing it because it's become automatic. She's rewired how you see yourself, made you believe that the real you is unacceptable, that you need to be smaller, quieter, less feeling to be tolerable. That's not love, that's destruction. The fake apologies that come later. Sometimes after calling you too sensitive, she'll come back with what sounds like an apology, usually hours later, sometimes days. I'm sorry you felt hurt. Notice what she's saying. She's not sorry for what she did. She's sorry you felt a certain way. That's not an apology, that's another way of saying you're too sensitive. A real apology takes responsibility. I'm sorry I said that. It was wrong. I see why it hurt you. I'm going to work on not doing it again. But you don't hear that. You hear, I'm sorry if you felt hurt. I'm sorry you took it that way. I'm sorry, but you have to understand I was stressed.